close out tonight's program, I am so pleased to introduce the College of Education's first artist in residence, Siamak Vossoughi, who will be reading from his short story, People in Profile.
All right. So this is a short story. It is a work of fiction, but some of the people in this story you may recognize. It's called People in Profile. People in Profile was Mrs. Leavenworth's own creation. It had originally started with historical figures in general, but by the second year she had changed it to humanitarians. There ought to be a good reason why a child should get dressed up as someone from history and sit on a stage being interviewed about their life and their historical significance as their parents watched. She didn't want them to think of it as Halloween. She wanted the night to take a side. At 6:30, Cesar Chavez was being chased by Albert Einstein through the school hallway in their excitement for the show. They forgot that they had fought earlier that day in the playground. Mrs. Leavenworth had been upset to see it, but it had been a humanitarian fight. They both wanted a lot from the world, the way that a 10-year-old boy ought to want a lot from the world, and sometimes that got them in the way of each other. For just a moment, she was glad to see them playing together again, before telling them to get backstage for the costume check. In the corner of the stage, Mahatma Gandhi looked out from behind the curtain and saw his mother and father in the crowd. They were sitting 1 row and 3 seats apart. It was the first time he had seen them together in a long time. When he was younger, he would be happy whenever they were together, however much they would criticize each other and however much they would argue with each other. Now he didn't feel particularly happy or sad to see them together. He had figured out who he was with his mother, and he had figured out who he was with his father. They were not the same person. Mrs. Leavenworth saw him looking out at the crowd, and she guessed what it was. "How are you feeling?" she said. "Okay. You saw that both your mother and father came?" "Yes." "I'm sure they're both very proud of you." "Thanks. Do you remember that word you were working on?" "Satyagraha," he said. "It means truth force or soul force." "That's right. I like truth force better." 5 minutes before the program started, Mrs. Leavenworth saw Mahatma Gandhi's father stand up and walk over to the other side of the room. Even 1 row and 3 seats had been too close. She hoped that the boy wouldn't see it, but she knew he would. They all looked for their parents. They looked for them to say, "Here I am, and here's who I've been all along, quite possibly." She thought that she should tell him so that he wouldn't come out and think that his father had left. When she did, he looked at her and said, "Okay." She thought that there was truth force and soul force in the way he said it. When it was Gandhi's turn, he was accompanied to the front of the stage by John Lennon, where they sat in 2 chairs facing the audience. Mrs. Leavenworth thought that Gandhi looked glad to read the interview questions of John Lennon as a way to not focus on his father moving across the room. Then they switched, and John Lennon asked the questions. He asked about Gandhi's upbringing, his leaving for England and South Africa, and about his becoming a lawyer. He asked about Gandhi's time in prison and about the Salt March. Gandhi demonstrated how he'd picked up a lump of salt at the sea at the end of the journey. "I understand that you were also killed by an assassin's bullet, like me," John Lennon said. "Yes," Gandhi said. "I was killed by a Hindu nationalist. England would not let India become independent unless it was split into India and Pakistan. I was opposed to the partition. I thought that Hindus and Muslims could live together peacefully. But there were some Hindus who were angry because they thought I was being too generous to Muslims." As she said it, Mrs. Leavenworth told herself not to look at his mother and father. She felt a fire in her face just then. It was not directed towards his parents' unpeaceful partition, although that was a part of it. But it came from the way that the children fit right into the world's greatest humanitarians without much difficulty. For as long as she had been doing it, they always fell right into place. They weren't surprised to find themselves leading the Salt March. Their only surprise was that the Salt March was finally getting the attention it deserved. 3 weeks later, Mrs. Leavenworth received a note from Heather, the recess teacher. Just wanted you to know that the disputes in the sanyard among the boys in your class have stopped happening. Even the arguments in the basketball court have stopped. I heard one of them saying the other day when there was a question of a foul that they should handle it with truth force. Not sure what this is, but if the whole school could do it, it would make my job much easier. Thanks.
Thank you, Siamak. That was wonderful.